So the weird girl, a cowboy, and the hot chick walk into a gas station. Burn is a psychological thriller, drama, mystery movie that follows an introverted gas station attendant weird girl who likes to burn herself at times through one of the weirdest robberies ever set to film. This movie has an interesting premise. Weird girl that doesn't know how to connect to people and clearly has some issues going on because she's constantly burning herself with like coffee and lighters and stuff, I guess to make herself feel alive. She tries to connect with people, but she's so socially retarded that it just always comes off as really awkward. One night while working the graveyard shift at a gas station, a guy comes in and holds the place up. While most people would freak out at this and just do whatever the robber said, she actually tries to help the guy and asks to go with him. That's where I'm going to stop, because after that, things get a little different and interesting. Let's just say that things escalate pretty quickly, and Murphy's Law goes into effect, and if it can happen, it does. The story here is pretty interesting, though it is told in a fairly basic way. That's not to say it wasn't entertaining, but I just felt like it had a little bit more to give, but it didn't know how to give it. The movie also seemed like it had something more to say, but it didn't really know what that was. As the night unfolds, it does keep you intrigued and interested throughout. There's a spot in the middle for a few minutes where things drag just a little bit, but it really quickly recoups that and ramps back up. I would say that the movie's about Melinda, the main character, the quote-unquote weird girl, and how she evolves through the events of this movie. But she doesn't really evolve at all. And that's probably the biggest gripe I have about this movie. It's characters. Not the performances, those are all actually really good, but the characters and the way that they're written, they're more or less kind of one note. They're set up to be interesting characters, and you want to see what happens with these characters, but they never evolve past what they're initially set up to be. The limited amount of characters that are in this movie, the way that they start in the beginning, is more or less how they are in the end. There's no growth to the characters. Nothing is achieved. Nothing really happens. If you look at how they were in the beginning of the movie versus the end of the movie, nothing's really changed. They're more or less the same people. This experience that should change them and should bring something out of them just really doesn't. You keep expecting for something like that to occur, and it just never does. Which is a bit disappointing because the characters are set up to be fairly interesting, and the movie and its premise, while small, is interesting as well. Thankfully, the movie's fairly interesting premise and its really good performances do keep it afloat from beginning to end. The movie also has one of the oddest rape scenes I've ever seen in a movie. I don't really want to say much more, and I know you're probably thinking to yourself, what the fuck, an odd rape scene? What rape scene's not odd? But no, this rape scene is odd, and it's not what you're expecting. Honestly, you're not even expecting a rape scene, period, so it's definitely not what you're expecting. I don't know, just watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. I did really like how the movie does present some moral dilemmas, and asks you to ask the question of, who's the bad guy here? The movie has clearly set up a bad guy, but it does want you to ask the question of, is this really the bad guy? Is it actually this person who's the bad guy? Are they both bad guys? Are neither of them bad guys and they're just victims of circumstance? I did like that type of moral dilemma and question that the movie did put out there for you. And it added a little bit more weight to the viewing experience. That doesn't change the fact that, like I said, there's just no growth here whatsoever. And that does make it a bit difficult for the movie to progress forward. Something else that the movie really could have dealt with more of was a bit of levity. There's a little bit, but it really could have dealt with a bit more humor. Not like full-on comedy, but the movie and the way it's structured and its overall tone really seems as if it would lend itself well to more dark humor throughout. Guys, there's not a lot more to be said about this one. It's a small little movie that set out to tell a small little story. And it does tell that story, but at the end of the day, you're kind of wondering why. Not that every movie out there has to have a point and some greater message, but the movie does set itself up in such a way that it seems as if the filmmakers were trying to have a message. But I don't really know if they know what that message was. As it stands though, it's a well-made movie with really good performances that's slacking in the story department just a little bit. And while it's not the greatest film to come out in recent memory, it's definitely worth checking out on Netflix. Give this one a shot one night when you don't have anything else to watch, and you'll be entertained. You probably won't remember it in a few days, but you know what? That night, you'll have a good time. So there it is, guys, my review of Burn. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Have you lost your mind? It's very possible.
This movie had a really good setup, but just like halfway through it stopped going up and just stalled and went flat. I mean, it was still entertaining, I guess, but it just didn't really go anywhere from there. And while I get why they called the movie Burn, I feel like there could have been a better title that would have better explained the story overall. Admittedly, the title Burn is pretty sweet.